All right, today we're jumping into a really powerful idea from Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way. It's all about this timeless art, really, of turning our biggest struggles into our greatest strengths.
So, let's just start with the one question that's at the heart of this whole thing. What if that huge problem you're facing, what if that was actually your greatest opportunity?
To really get our heads around that question, let's dive into an old Zen story. So you got this king, right? And he wants to test his people. He decides to place a giant boulder, a massive rock, right in the middle of a main road. It completely blocks the way for everyone.
So the king hides nearby to see what happens. And for days, the kingdom's wealthiest subjects, the merchants, the courtiers, they come up to the boulder. And what do? They just complain. They blame the king for not keeping the roads clear, and then they just turn back. Not a single one even tries to move it. But then, along comes this lone peasant. And he's different. He doesn't complain, he just gets to work. He strains, he struggles, he finds a big branch to use as a lever, and with a ton of effort, he finally manages to move that huge rock out of the way.
And what does he find waiting for him underneath that rock? A purse full of gold coins and a note from the king himself. And the note from the king said this: "The obstacle in the path becomes the path. Never forget, within every obstacle is an opportunity to improve our condition." And boom, that's the big idea we're diving into today. Now, this isn't just some nice little story, right? This ancient lesson is actually the very core of Stoic philosophy. It's a real, practical framework for turning our trials into triumphs. Okay, so how do we actually do this? Well, the Stoics broke it down into a simple three-part framework. First up is perception. That's all about how we see things. Then comes action, what we actually do about it. And finally, there's will. That's the inner strength we use to endure. Let's break down each one. So everything kicks off with that first discipline, perception. See, the Stoics argued that it's not what happens to us that matters most. It's the story we tell ourselves about what happens. That's where the real power is. Here's the key difference to grasp. On one hand, you have the event. That's the objective thing that happened. But on the other hand, you have your judgment. That's the subjective, emotional story you wrap around it. The real trick, the real power, is learning to pull those two things apart. The Roman emperor and, a giant of Stoic philosophy, Marcus Aurelius, he put it perfectly. He said, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." It's all about that choice. That's where our power lies.
Okay, that sounds great in theory, but what does it look like in the real world? Well, let's take a look at John D. Rockefeller, way back during the huge financial panic of 1857.
So while everyone else was freaking out, losing their minds and their money, what was Rockefeller doing? He stayed totally calm. He saw the opportunity inside the disaster. He just ignored the mad crowd, as he called it, and he looked at the whole crisis as a free education. And it was that perception, that mindset, that let him build an empire while everyone else was falling apart. But look, having the right perception is just step one. It's not enough on its own, and that brings us right to the second discipline, action. Once you see things clearly, you've got to do something. The work itself is the path forward. And I don't think there's a better example of this than Demosthenes. We're talking about the greatest public speaker in all of ancient Greece. But what's incredible is that he started out with this mountain of disadvantages working against him. Just look at this contrast. On the one side, his obstacles were just huge. He was frail and sickly, he had a terrible speech impediment, and on top of that, he was an orphan who got cheated out of his inheritance. But his response? Just relentless, focused action. He'd fill his mouth with pebbles to practice speaking clearly. He shaved half his head to force himself to stay inside and study. He rehearsed his speeches while running or shouting into the wind. He didn't just deal with his weaknesses, he used deliberate action to turn them into his absolute greatest strengths.
So it's no surprise that later in life, when someone asked him what the three most important parts of a great speech were, his answer was just three words: action, action, action. That was his secret sauce.
All right, so we've got perception, to see things the right way. We've got action, to actually do something about it. But there's a third piece of the puzzle that kind of holds it all together. This last part is what gives us the strength to hang in there when things get really, really tough. It's what completes the transformation. And that is the discipline of will. Now, this isn't just about gritting your teeth and pushing through. It's more like an inner fortress. It's that deep-down strength to endure what you can't fix right away, to keep going through setbacks, and, crucially, to accept the things you just can't change. See, without a strong will, fear can twist our perception, and exhaustion can stop our actions dead in their tracks. Will is the foundation for everything else.
So when you bring all three together, that clear perception, that deliberate action, and that resilient will, that's when you can truly live out this incredible idea from Marcus Aurelius: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. It's a total mindset shift. The problem isn't just blocking your path, the problem is your path.
You know, if you look at great people throughout history, they weren't great because they had easy, problem-free lives. Not at all. They were great because of their ability to look at those problems and see them as raw material, as fuel for their ambition, for their growth.
And so that brings it all back to you, doesn't it? What's your obstacle? What's that big rock in your road? And more importantly, how are you going to use it?
The mechanics of this book can change your workflow. If you found these insights useful, hit the like button. Share this with a fellow professional, and subscribe to the Book Mechanic for more deep dives into the world's best ideas. See you in the next build.